There's someone in your life, a real person, someone you know now or maybe once knew, who's facing a deep struggle right now. And that struggle exists because of you. Not because you chased them, not because you begged for their attention, and not because you demanded answers that never came. No, it's because you stopped doing something they assumed you would always do. That quiet, almost invisible change shifted everything between you. The angels want you to grasp this truth before doubt or unnecessary guilt takes hold. At some point, you made a subtle but profound choice. It wasn't dramatic. There were no speeches, no tearful goodbyes, no announcements. Just a gentle moment when you realized you could no longer give endlessly to someone who never replenished what they took. Perhaps you stopped always being the first to reach out.
Maybe you stopped explaining your feelings to someone who only heard to reply, not to understand. Perhaps you stopped waiting for messages that never came, or stopped forgiving the same hurt disguised with new words. Or maybe, most powerfully, you simply stopped trying to prove your worth to someone blind to it. Outwardly, it seemed small, but inwardly, it was transformative. You chose peace. You chose dignity. You chose to guard the heart God placed in you. The person now caught in almost helpless love for you never saw that coming. In their mind, you were a constant, a presence that would always forgive, always reach, always give one more chance, one more explanation, one more piece of your heart. They became so accustomed to your presence, like sunlight we take for granted, that they only felt its absence when it quietly slipped away behind the clouds. They took your energy for granted, not always from malice, but from assumption. They believed your love was endless, your patience boundless, and that no matter what they did or didn't do, you would always be there. When someone assumes love is guaranteed, they stop cherishing it. They stop protecting it. They stop treating it like the rare, sacred gift it is. They set it aside, thinking they'll return to it later, and later never arrives. Then, quietly and calmly, without anger or drama, you shifted. You stopped bridging the distance alone. You stopped filling the silence with your voice just to ease their absence. You stopped shrinking yourself so they could feel bigger. And in that gentle withdrawal, beloved, something remarkable happened. They began to feel your absence. At first, they may have dismissed it, convincing themselves you were merely busy, that you'd return to old patterns soon enough. But days turned into weeks, and still you didn't chase. You didn't remind them of what you had given. You didn't send midnight messages to check if they still cared. You simply stayed rooted in your own path, moving forward with quiet strength. Slowly, in the spaces they could no longer ignore, it hit them. Something had changed. You had changed. And your absence began to echo in places they never realized you had filled. In the middle of a long day, when something funny happened, and you were the first person they wanted to tell, but couldn't. In quiet evenings, when their own thoughts grew loud, and the steady, patient voice that once soothed them was gone. Memories of small talks, shared laughter, the way you noticed what others dismissed, the way you held space even when your own life was heavy. All of it now felt profound. They finally understood what they had overlooked. You were never ordinary. You never were. Now this person thinks of you constantly. When the world grows quiet, you're there. When something good happens, they instinctively reach for their phone, and then remember you're not just a text away, and that memory cuts deep. They replay small moments, late-night conversations, the way you made them feel truly seen when no one else noticed. Questions rise in their mind that have no easy answers. Why didn't I recognize it sooner? Why did I treat something so precious as if it would never disappear? Why did I believe they would always be there, always giving, always forgiving? And with each unanswered question, something shifts inside them. Because now you are no longer immediately available. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer bridging the gap between what they offered and what you truly deserved. That distance, the sacred space you carved, has made your presence more powerful than ever, more missed than it was when you were always there. This is often how love truly awakens, not at the start, not in perfect timing, but through loss, through the gut-wrenching realization of life without someone who genuinely mattered. They didn't fall in love while you were always there, endlessly giving. They are falling in love now, in the silence of your absence, finally feeling the weight of what they nearly let slip away forever. Understand this, beloved. You didn't do this intentionally. You weren't following a secret plan, and you weren't trying to make them miss you. You were simply worn out, tired of being the only one carrying a burden that was meant to be shared, tired of giving what was never equally returned, tired of waiting for promises that never materialized. So you chose yourself. You stopped sacrificing your own heart to stay present for someone else's comfort. And in that quiet, faithful act of self-preservation, you became exactly what they can't stop thinking about. The very thing they once took for granted is now the thing they ache for most. This experience touches on one of the most profound truths about human relationships. People often don't recognize the value of what they have until it's no longer within easy reach. When someone consistently gives their heart, energy, and presence without receiving the same in return, it's easy for the other person to become complacent. They take the constant giving for granted, assuming it will never end. But there's a point where even the most patient, loving person reaches a boundary, a quiet line where they simply can't continue sacrificing their own well-being to fill someone else's gaps. That moment isn't dramatic. It isn't meant to punish. It's a natural, healthy act of self-preservation, a declaration that their own heart, time, and energy matter as much as anyone else's. The shift that occurs when someone steps back is subtle, but transformative. To the one who relied on their presence, it may feel like a shock, a sudden absence they hadn't anticipated. And in that absence, they are forced to reflect. They begin to notice the little things they never valued, the patience, the attentiveness, the way this person consistently showed up, even when it was inconvenient or exhausting. Suddenly, the love they once overlooked becomes impossible to ignore. This process often teaches a profound lesson about reciprocity, respect, and genuine appreciation. It's a reminder that love isn't just a feeling. It's action, consistency, and care. When these things are no longer guaranteed, their absence can awaken understanding, longing, and sometimes even regret. At its core, this is about boundaries and self-respect. Choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you conscious of your worth. It's a quiet but powerful assertion that your love, attention, and presence are not infinite resources to be assumed, taken, or undervalued. The person who once relied on your constant giving is suddenly confronted with the reality that you are human, that your patience has limits, and that your absence carries meaning. This awakening is often more effective than any confrontation or argument because it comes from genuine feeling, an undeniable recognition of what they lost or almost lost. In stepping away, you create space for both yourself and the other person to see clearly, to reassess, and in some cases, to finally appreciate the depth and significance of your presence in their life. What happens after that shift is often surprising, even to you. The person who once took your love for granted starts to notice patterns they never valued before. They remember how you made room for them in your life, even when your own world was heavy. They remember the thoughtful gestures, the patience, the moments when you held space for their feelings without judgment. These memories, once ordinary, now feel profound, because your absence has given them weight. The quiet distance you created forces reflection. They start to question their own actions, their own assumptions, and suddenly, the love they overlooked becomes impossible to ignore, What they dismissed as ordinary now feels rare and essential. This is how true appreciation is born, not through words, not through ultimatums, but through the undeniable reality of your value when it is no longer so readily available. And it's important to understand that this is not about punishment or manipulation. You didn't step back to make them suffer or to prove a point. You did it because your heart could no longer bear being stretched thin for someone who wouldn't meet you halfway. This is self-preservation, not strategy. And yet, in stepping into your own power, you create a paradox. Your absence teaches them more about your worth than your presence ever could. It awakens something in them they never felt before, a longing, a recognition, a deep, almost painful awareness of what they have lost or almost lost. And in that awakening, they often start to realize that love is not just about being given. It's about being chosen, appreciated, and met with the same care that one gives. You didn't teach them this on purpose, yet in choosing yourself, you became the mirror, showing them what genuine love truly feels like. This process is both humbling and transformative for everyone involved. For you, it's a reclamation of your energy, your dignity, and your heart. You learn that giving without reciprocity is not a measure of love, it's a measure of imbalance. For the other person, it's a stark, sometimes painful lesson in awareness and gratitude. And sometimes this distance brings clarity to the relationship itself. They may realize they want to step up, to meet you where you are, and to honor the love that they once took for granted. Or they may realize that the gap between what they are willing to give and what you deserve is too wide to bridge. Either way, your choice to step back sets a boundary that is impossible to ignore and demands a deeper understanding of love, respect, and the value of presence. As time passes, the absence you created begins to shape not just their awareness, but the way they feel about themselves in relation to you. They start to notice the ways they relied on your consistency, on your patience, on the quiet ways you carried the relationship. What once felt automatic now feels like a void, an emptiness they can't fill because it was never about things, but about the presence, care, and attention you gave so freely. They realized that the love you offered wasn't limitless. It was profound, intentional, and rooted in a depth they didn't appreciate until it was gone. And this realization can be uncomfortable, even painful. It forces them to confront their own assumptions, their own inattention, and sometimes their own sense of entitlement. Suddenly, what they thought was always there becomes precious. Your absence turns ordinary moments into memories they treasure, small gestures into reminders of what genuine love actually looks like, and the consistency they overlooked into something extraordinary. Meanwhile, for you, this period of quiet withdrawal isn't empty, it's life-giving. It allows you to rebuild your energy, to nurture your own heart, and to reconnect with your own needs and desires. It's not about withholding love to make someone feel guilt. It's about learning that your love is powerful, that it deserves respect, and that you are worthy of reciprocity. In creating that sacred space, you are no longer just a participant in someone else's emotional story. You are honoring your own, and often, this is where the magic happens. Their awareness grows, but so does yours. You begin to see clearly the difference between love that is returned and love that is assumed. You begin to recognize that stepping back is not a loss, but a declaration of self-worth, a gentle teaching that love is not about endless giving. It's about balance, respect, and shared care. And in that quiet balance, both hearts are transformed. One learns appreciation and longing, the other learns strength, clarity, and the undeniable value of their own presence. In the end, what you have done is far more powerful than words can capture. By stepping back, by quietly removing yourself from being the only one who carries the weight of connection, you've done something sacred. You've reclaimed your own heart. You've reminded yourself that your energy, your patience, your love are not infinite resources to be assumed, taken, or undervalued. This act of self-preservation is not selfishness. It's a profound acknowledgement that your presence matters, that your care deserves to be met with respect, and that your heart deserves protection. And in that choice, the person who once took you for granted is forced to confront the reality of what they lost, or almost lost. They feel it in the quiet moments, in the spaces where your voice, your attention, and your love used to be. They feel the absence that your presence once filled so effortlessly, and in that absence they begin to understand your worth in ways that words, arguments, or gestures could never have taught them. This is the paradox of love. Sometimes we are only fully appreciated when we are not easily accessible. The person who relied on your constancy now realizes how extraordinary it was, how rare it is to find someone who gives with such depth and intention. They are awakened to your value not through punishment, not through anger, but through the quiet, undeniable truth of your absence. And that awakening is more profound than any lesson could ever be. At the same time, you emerge stronger, clearer, and more aligned with your own truth. You no longer give to fill a void in someone else's life. You give because it's a choice, a conscious act rooted in love and respect for both yourself and others. You have set a boundary that protects your heart while simultaneously teaching the other person the weight of what they almost let slip away. Ultimately, this journey is about understanding that love is never measured by how much we give without return, but by the balance, respect, and mutual care that underpins it. You have demonstrated what it means to love with dignity and to choose yourself without guilt. The person who once took you for granted may now ache for what they once overlooked, but that ache is not your responsibility. It is the mirror reflecting your worth. And in that reflection, you see clearly that stepping back was not a loss, but a gain of self-respect, of peace, and of clarity, a gain that teaches both hearts, one, the invaluable lesson of true appreciation, and the other, the undeniable power of honoring one's own love. You have not only protected your heart, you have transformed the dynamics of connection itself, proving that sometimes the most profound acts of love are the ones that begin with ourselves.